everybody, and welcome to the playoff preview special of Touchdown in the UK, the UK-based NFL podcast focusing on the pick'ems from Sky Sports, where we have a special today for you listeners, and it is official now. We've been talking about it all season, talking about that one of our key members of the Touchdown UK team, who's been right up there throughout the whole campaign, it is finally official. We have with us today the fifth best pickster in the world, according to NFL Pick'ems by Sky Bet. He had a barnstorming 15 correct picks last week to make one final last title charge when we all thought hope was gone, and he finished in a respectable top 5 position. Cliff, now is your moment of glory. How did you do it?
Well, I'm going to be honest this week, lads. I stuck with my word and I picked my picks and I never changed. And I think if I'd done that all season long, maybe we'd be talking to the winner, but we never know. I'm happy with fifth. I did want first, I'm going to be honest. But fifth in the whole world, first in the Browns League, for all the Browns fans in the UK, I'm happy with that. So, and I obviously won our little mini league between us and a few other friends. So I'll take that all season, all day long for this season.
I mean, more than a respectable finish. Top 5 is some going. Have you got any advice for wannabe picksters out there, particularly people who are looking maybe to start the NFL Pick'ems next year? Have you got any advice for them? This was your first year. This was your rookie season in the NFL Pick'ems. What would you suggest to them?
So what I would say is go with your gut, because if I'd done that, like we said earlier, if I'd gone with my gut a few more times, I think I might have picked up a few more points this season. So trust your instincts, go with your gut and stick with it.
You've heard it there, straight from the horse's mouth. The fifth best pickster in the world, giving his golden nuggets of information. Right. We've got to talk about last week's games before we look forward to the playoffs. Obviously, we're all excited about the playoffs, particularly Cliff here. His beloved Browns are in there. But we've got to look back. Last week, there were some big games. Obviously, Cliff got 15 of the picks right. We're all a little bit disappointed with the one that he got wrong in the Cowboys. There was a big win for the Chargers. Nicko is a very happy man over here. And there's been some certainly angry Giants fans knocking about on Twitter when I've seen some of the decisions made in the Eagles-Washington game. Obviously, as you know, for me personally, I'm quite like the Washington myself, so I'm not too worried that my Eagles basically gave them a route to the playoffs. Right, Cliff, talk us through yours then. Some big games, big correct picks from you. Any you want to focus on in particular?
Yeah, I've got a rule going into next season now, and it's never pick the Cowboys. They've done me over a few times now, and I've cut loose. Cowboys are gone for me. I'm never picking them Cowboys ever again. I thought they'd do it this week and put a bit of pressure on Washington football team, and they were the only one that I got wrong this week. So my rule for next season is never pick those stupid Cowboys.
Here, I'm with you on that one. Never picked them this season until this week, and let me down as well. Nicko, anything you want to say about the Chargers? That final little streak that you had at the end, you've got to be happy with that.
Yeah, 4-game winning streak at the end. Not allowed Anthony Lynn to keep his job, though. A little bit surprised. I thought he was 50-50, as I think I said last week, whether he stays or goes, based on a few different factors. I think I got 13 out of 16, and Cowboys being one of the ones I got wrong. I think I went with the Dolphins in the end against the Bills, which was embarrassing in hindsight, and the Cardinals to beat the Rams.
So, as we know, incredible finish from Cliff. Number one pickster in our eyes, but the number 5 pickster in the world. So, as we said, this is a playoff preview special. We know who are in the playoffs. We've got 6 wildcard matches we're going to focus on today. So a lot shorter pick section, but we've got plenty to talk about. And we've even come up with a special playoff predictor for all you listeners out there. So, Nicko, I'm coming to you first. We've got Bills, Colts, a spread at the minute of minus 6.5 in favour of the Bills. Who are you going for in this one?
I think it's going to be a tough game, to be honest. I actually do think it'll be a lot closer than people think. The Bills last week, as I said, they embarrassed the Dolphins in the end. Josh Allen only needed 40 yards for the single season passing record. And he did that comfortably in the first half with over 200. But I think the Colts, although it wasn't that convincing a win against the Jaguars, it was 28-14. It wasn't an absolute blowout that it could have been. I think the Colts will keep the Bills under control a bit more than you think. So I think I'm going to go against the spread there. I think it'll be narrower than that.
But were you going to be backing the Bills in this one?
I want to be picking the Bills. As much as I'd like Phil Rivers to get that win, I don't think he will.
We know that's the team you're backing anyway in the playoffs. We know.
Yeah, that's who I hope. Just for him, I hope he can get there.
Right, so it's over to me next. And it's probably a good job I've got this pick, to be honest, because I think there'd be a teary Cliff right now if he was having to go through this, and it's still a very sensitive subject. So Steelers Browns. If you asked me 2 weeks ago, not 2 weeks ago, if you asked me 3 weeks ago before the Jets game, I'd have stuck with the Browns here. However, Browns' end of season form, the fact that the club is absolutely riddled with COVID, that's the only way I can describe it. Obviously losing the head coach, 2 other coaches, 2 players ahead of Sunday's game, Monday morning's game in the UK time. And the fact they've been struggling with some of those COVID absences over the last week. Got past the Steelers last week. However, obviously the Steelers rested all their big boys. But I can only see a Steelers win, I'm afraid, here, Cliff, and I'm really sorry to all the fellow UK Browns fans out there. I think COVID's going to be pushing you too thin here. You're going to be stretched too thinly, and we're going to be back in the Steelers. The spread changed literally as I was looking at it earlier. It was minus 4.5. It's now changed to minus 6, and I think that is a good bet as well. Cliff, I'll let you have a chance to talk about the Browns a little bit later on, so just hold it in there for me.
I've ignored everything you said then, as I'm totally the opposite, and I'm backing the boys.
That's good to hear, mate. Blind faith is always great times in these situations. Right, Cliff then. Ravens, Titans. Due to be a close game by the looks of it. Spread looking at 3.5 currently in favour of the Ravens. Who are you going with?
Yeah, I think it will be a close game. I think the Ravens have hit some unbelievable form in the last few weeks. I think they ran for over 400 yards last week, which is unbelievable again, like I just said. Titans, good game last week. I was watching that one between them and the Texans, and to and froing back and forth for the division, and ended up clinching it in the end. But I just look at the Titans' loss this year, and they've lost to the Packers, the Browns, the Colts, Bengals when Burrow was playing, and the Steelers. And I just think all of those, quarterback is their main man. I know that Nicko's probably giggling, but that's probably Baker Mayfield's best game as well against the Titans. Browns went into that game thinking they were going to run the ball a lot, and it was going to be Chubb v Henry. And I think Baker threw for so many touchdowns and so on. So that's the only issue that I've got with Lamar Jackson this week. Will he be able to throw the ball? Because I think they'll be able to stop him a little bit. But I do think in the end, Ravens are going to just sneak this one. I think it's going to be a last-minute field goal.
Thanks for that, Cliff. You not only gave the listeners a preview of that game, you also gave them a review of the Browns-Titans earlier on in the season. Really appreciate that.
The reason I was laughing was because Cliff basically read out, I think, the exact same thing I said last week about all the Titans' losses. So he's got my notes in front of him, clearly.
Did you say that last week?
I think I said every loss they had was to a playoff team or a playoff caliber team, except the Bengals, but they had Joe Burrow.
That's how much I listen to you, mate. Sorry.
Right, moving swiftly on.
Mate, we can't keep that in there then, can we?
Yeah, I think that's good.
Yeah, I think we do, yeah. A bit of banter. Moving swiftly on. Got the Bucks, Washington, Nicko. I can only see one winner personally. Who are you going with?
I bet you think that's Washington.
I doubt watching this time. I'm a realist, unlike Cliff, and I can't see Washington get through this.
Yeah, they obviously finished a lot stronger at the end of the season. They were 7-9 in the end after going 2-6 through the first half. But the Buccaneers, I mean, from the games I've seen of them, they're a very strong team. I was even looking at the stats earlier, and on the Football Outsiders DVOA rankings I like to look at, They're in the top 5 on both offensive and defensive DVOA. If you take the Saints game out against quarterbackless Broncos, which the Saints were top, you would have Tampa Bay top if that game wasn't included. And I'm also hoping to get Mike Evans back as well. He's hopeful to be back for the game. So, yeah, Tampa Bay win.
Minus 8.5 on the spread, Nicko. Would you touch it?
Washington have been hit and miss this season, where first team to beat the Steelers, but I think the Bucs should win. So for me personally, I'd be gambling on over 8.5.
Fair play.
Interesting.
Over to me then. I've got Saints Bears here. I can only see one winner in this. The Bears have been really inconsistent all season. It was at certain points of playoffs were looking a distant hope. They managed to get there. But for me, the Saints, they've had a couple of losses, a couple of blips across the season. They obviously seem very highly rated on Nicko's favourite stats website. And I can only see a Saints winning this one. It's minus 10 on the spread. Being a bit of a rookie myself, not necessarily knowing how close these playoffs games may be, I would be cautious to take that bet on. But I think maybe a more experienced NFL fan would probably be willing to take it on. And final one then of the wild card round, Cliff, is over to you. Seahawks, Rams. Looks like it's going to be a good game. Spread looking nice and close, 4.5 at the minute, currently favouring the Seahawks. Who are you going with?
I'm favouring the Seahawks as well, but the spread I'd stay well away from, to be honest, because I think this is definitely a game that probably the one game out of the ones in this weekend of fixtures that I think is a coin flip for me. So I do fancy the Seahawks just because they've won the last 4 in a row. And the Rams hit a bit of a sticky patch a couple of weeks ago. Lost to the Jets, then lost to the Seahawks. But then they did look good against the Cardinals, even though Kyler Murray went out injured and so on. But I just think, all being said, the Seahawks will do enough to get the win. But I do not fancy the spread enough to put my house on it.
Fair play. You've heard our 6 picks there, listeners, for the wildcard playoff round. What we've got a special for you today as well is we've done our own playoff predictor. We've picked out how we see these games going, and we've even picked out who we think are going to be our Super Bowl champions. We've got a wonderful graphic, so make sure you hit us up on our socials to see the graphic for each of us, and you can check back to it next week. You can check back to it the following week as well to see how we're getting on with this. I mean, you may as well check back for the final as well after that. So, Nicko, I'm going to come to you first. We've obviously heard your picks for the Bills and the Bucs that you see getting through the wild card round. How do you see things playing out from there on?
Yeah, for me, from the AFC side, it's the Bills to beat the Colts. I'm not going with Cliff, and I'm having the Steelers to beat the Browns, and I'm having the Ravens to beat the Titans, which gives Kansas City Chiefs the matchup against the Ravens. I know it's going to be tough at that stage. You've got 4 good teams involved, but they're all going to be tough matchups. I think the Chiefs edge out the Ravens, and I think the Bills edge out the Steelers. And then the Chiefs then win the AFC game and go to the Super Bowl. In the NFC, as you said, I've got the Bucs to beat the Washington football team. I've got Seahawks to beat the Rams, and I've got Saints to beat the Bears. And then in the next round, I've got Saints to beat the Seahawks and Packers to beat the Bucs, and then again to beat the Saints in the NFC Championship game. And then the big one of them all, I've got the Packers beating the Chiefs in the Super Bowl.
Ooh, so some interesting picks there from Nicko. I've got to say, we picked these completely independently, and I have picked a lot the same as him. However, there's some key differences in there. So, like Nicko, I've got getting through this round, I've got Bills to beat the Colts, and I think they'll beat them quite convincingly, personally. As you know, I've picked the Steelers to beat the Browns, and I definitely fancy the Ravens to beat the Titans. That was the easy one for me. This is where things get a bit more difficult. I'm really behind the Bills, to be honest. I think they've absolutely gone steaming into these playoffs. And I think if they can keep this momentum, they're going to be my surprise team. And I'm going to be backing the Bills to go all the way. So I fancy them to beat the Steelers. I fancy the Chiefs to beat the Ravens. And then the surprise one is I think the Bills are then going to beat the Chiefs and make it to the Super Bowl. Now, on the flip side of this, again, I've gone very similar to Nicko. I fancy the Saints to beat the Bears, as a no-brainer, as I already said. Seahawks and Rams is a really tough one for me. I'm just edging towards the Seahawks. I've backed Birds all the way through. Better not stop now. There aren't many Birds who've actually made it to the playoffs in terms of, we've literally got the Ravens and the Seahawks, but I'm backing the Seahawks here. I'm backing the Bucks as well to beat Washington. But this is where we differ. I fancy the Seahawks to beat the Saints. I fancy the Packers to beat the Bucks, and for the Packers then to make it to the Super Bowl against the Bills. And I think they are the team to stop the Bills. I'm sorry, Bills Mafia. I think you're going to make it to the Super Bowl, but I think it's going to be one step too far for you. Very respectable season, though, for all those Bills fans out there. Right then, Cliff, what are you saying?
Well, my first one, as I've just said, I think the Ravens are going to win. I agree with both of you. I think the Bills are going to win to make the Bills be the Ravens in the next round. And the reason that they're playing each other in the next round is because I have gone for the Browns to beat the Steelers. We beat them this weekend, just gone. I don't want to hear any of the excuses of players being rested. We're going in with form, and we're going to beat them this weekend and set up a match with Kansas City Chiefs. And then, will the Browns beat the Chiefs? No. I've got the Chiefs beating that one. And they're going to meet the Ravens. And what a match that would be to make it to the Super Bowl. Chiefs v Ravens. And I've got Chiefs winning that one. So they make it to the Super Bowl for the second year running. And then on the NFC side, I think we've gone pretty much similar. We've gone Bucks to beat Washington and meet the Packers. And then I've got Saints to beat the Bears and the Seahawks to beat the Rams, as I just discussed. The winners of those two games, I've gone for the Packers and Seahawks. And then I've got the Packers, as you pair up, making it to the Super Bowl. But I have got the Chiefs winning the Super Bowl for a second year running. Mahomes is going to lift the trophy.
So you heard it there, listeners. Got to be keen to look back, check back next week to see how accurate we are. If we got through our wild card round first, that's the first step for us. And then we'll see who the real picksters are. Fifth best in the world here. Can he carry it through into the playoffs? Who knows? Who knows? We are going to be competing in the Super Bowl challenge as well as part of this. We're going to be putting our playoff predictions into that to see how we fare against the rest of the world. And the odds would say that our Cliff's going to be up there. Right then, moving on to our take a punt feature. We may have less games to pick from this week, which makes it a little bit tougher, but we have selected 3 bets, roughly around even odds, that we think have got a good chance of winning. So our take a punt treble this week, I'm passing over to Nicko to let you all know.
Can we just discuss last week's first?
Don't you worry, Cliff, don't you? I'm going to mention that one, mate.
Thank you.
So last week, as I think Theo said, that was the only one who won, and me and Cliff were the ones to let him down. This time it was a reverse, and me and Cliff won, and Theo was the only one to let it down. So this week, as Theo mentioned, he's gone for the Steelers -6. I've gone for the Ravens -3, and Cliff's gone for the Washington football team +8.5, and that's 5.81 to 1.
Decent odds there, listeners.
Can I just have a shout out for one of the listeners on YouTube, Jason, the world is yours, who commented to us and went against my last week's take a punt pick, and unfortunately it lost. But thank you for the shout out, and I advise you to listen to me again this week, mate.
We do appreciate listeners, and we do recommend, if you can, get in touch. We want to hear your picks. We want to hear what you're going for on Take a Punt as well. Shout out to Jason on YouTube. So it's the last one of the season, and me and Cliff are thanking our lucky stars that those Chargers didn't make it to the playoffs themselves, because we wouldn't have to endure any more of this. It's one more week. It's 30 more seconds. It's half a minute of Herbert. Are you ready, Nicko? 30 seconds, go.
After setting the record for the most passing touchdowns by a rookie last week, he extended that this week to 31 in the win over the Chiefs. With that, he becomes the youngest player to reach 30 passing touchdowns He also set the rookie record for the most pass completions with 396, the most total touchdowns in a season with 36, and the most multi-touchdown games with 10 out of the 15 he played. And his 5 rushing touchdowns are the most by a Chargers quarterback in a single season in franchise history.
That is bang on 30 seconds. Like, I don't think you could have got that any closer. Got to give you there,
I've
Nick.
learned something new today. I can fall asleep in less than 30 seconds.
That's it now. No more half a minute of Herbert. He's not going to be a rookie next year. Is he going to keep it up, Nicko? What are you saying? I'll give you one little more chance to talk about your boy. Do you think he's going to continue this form now he's no longer a rookie?
I hope so. I hope he'll keep it up. Obviously, as I just said earlier, we've fired Anthony Lynn, so whoever they bring in needs to be someone who he can work with, and hopefully they'll get the best out of him. So yeah, we'll see what happens. But Cliff, your boy Baker, Lamar Jackson, Carson Wentz, and Cam Newton were all people who held those records before. 2 have been MVP. He's destined for greatness, mate.
The worst thing about all this is I actually like Herbert. I like him. I think he's a good player. I like watching him. If I'm honest, I don't actually mind the Chargers. It's just Nicko. It's just how much he loves Herbert.
On that note, I think it's a good opportunity here just to have a special mention to Nicko. His boy Isaac Rochelle at the Chargers, he's absolutely loving off him on Twitter, and I think he deserves it. Nicko has raked in now, what is it, about 600,000 retweets?
I wish it was 600,000.
It's a valiant effort, though. I think we're at about 6,500. Is that right?
Yeah, it's around that mark.
6,500 retweets. Backing his boy Isaac Rochelle to win the WPMOY challenge. It's still going on. He's still in the lead, and I think if he does win this, he owes a big credit to you, Nicko. And I know he's very grateful of it, and he sent you a few lovely tweets along the way. So, big shout out to Nicko. So it's a celebration podcast this week. Right, we've got a couple of absolutely corking listeners' questions for you. Some belters this week to finish off our playoff preview. So firstly then, there are 6 teams looking for a head coach for next season. They are the Lions, Falcons, Chargers, Texans, Jaguars, and Jets. My question for you two from our listeners is, who do you think is the most enticing franchise for a head coach? Nicko, I'm coming to you on this one because I've got a special question lined up for Cliff.
The main 3 are clearly the Jets, the Jaguars, and the Chargers for me. The Jets and Jaguars both down at the bottom. They have the number 1 and number 2 pick. I think the Jaguars out of those 2 teams will be the more appealing to head coaches. They've got the number 1 pick, and it's likely to be Trevor Lawrence. In Jacksonville, you're obviously in Florida. Nice warm weather. I think there's no tax there as well, so every little helps. As for the Chargers, their team is a lot better, obviously, than the other 2. They've got the quarterback set. He's there ready for the future. They've got some good weapons in Keenan Allen, Mike Williams. Defensively, Joe Bosa, Derwin James, if they stay healthy. So I think it would be, if the coach wants to come in and wants to build it from the ground up, it's the Jaguars. If you want something where you've got some good pieces in place, it's the Chargers.
Fair enough. I appreciate it. I thought you were going to go blindly straight for the Chargers there, so I've got to give you credit there. Bit disappointed you didn't give a shout out to your mate Isaac Rochelle, though. So, next question then, and this is from a listener not too far from us at all. And it's going to be one that's a bit sore for Cliff. So I've had to pre-warn him, and I've given him a chance to have a think about his answer here. So as I said earlier, as the Browns are absolutely riddled with COVID at the minute, they've had some big losses over the last few weeks. They've now lost ahead of their first playoff game. Coach Kevin Stefanski, Cliff's absolute hero. 2 of his fellow coaching team, 2 players all missing for the big game against the Steelers. Has COVID written off any hope the Browns had of winning playoff matches? Cliff, let's see if you can talk now without just letting that blind faith break through.
So in terms of COVID, obviously it has had an impact. It's had an impact on the Browns now for 2 weeks since the Jets game. Where we had all the wide receivers out. And then last week, Denzel Ward was out and so on. So I do think COVID is going to have an issue this week. There's no doubt about it. Stefanski being out, Bitonio being out. Hodge, not so much, if I'm honest, because I think when I read that it was a wide receiver, Hodge wasn't one of the first, well, not one of the first, not the first wide receiver to come to mind. There was hoping it wasn't. You'd obviously think of Landry and Higgins first. But what I will say is injuries as well for us are an issue at the minute. I mean, Vernon has torn his Achilles, that season out. I mean, if we re-sign him, he could be missing some next season as well. So I want to stay faithful. I really do want to stay positive. I want to stay in that good mindset. We've made the playoffs, but my biggest worry, sitting here now, I feel confident still, but it's who's going to be a close contact, who's going to be out before Sunday. And when I check Twitter every day at the minute, I feel like we find out another story about the Browns and COVID. So that's my biggest worry. I think any more, and we're really struggling.
I think that's fair enough. I think it's a difficult time for the Browns and Browns fans out there. It will make it all the more better story if they can come through and beat the Steelers against the odds, but only time will tell. Obviously, it's a bit of an awkward kickoff time for us in the UK. 1:30 Monday morning, not ideal at all. I do feel for you there, Cliff. I'm sure you'll be there. It's going to be a tough day on Monday. It's particularly
the only positive thing with that for me is I'll have less of the gifts from Nicko when Steelers do score a touchdown or anything like that. So
just on that one, I was looking again in my little stats earlier, and Cleveland rank 18th in both DVOA and weighted DVOA, which favours the later games rather than the earlier games, which is lowest for a team with a winning record. And that's also below the 4-2 Falcons and the 49ers. So it doesn't look great.
Talk about kicking the man when he's down.
We've got the big guns. We've got Baker. We've got Baker in the team. That's all we need at the minute. As long as he stays COVID free, I'm going to have hope.
There we go. You've heard it there, listeners. Now, the final wildcard question, the moment where I get to take you outside of NFL a little bit, look at the wider world. It is going to have a bit of a COVID tinge to it. Now, as we are recording this podcast for you right now, listeners, we are currently in lockdown 3.0 in the UK. It's not a nice time, but it's something that we're just going to have to deal with the realities of COVID. So my question to you two is that NFL has successfully completed their regulation season in the allocated time frame that they had during a global pandemic that has affected the world in unimaginable ways. Other sports are struggling at the moment, particularly a sport that's close to all our hearts in football in England, soccer for those Americans out there. Lots of games being called off. Lower tier levels of soccer are now being called off because of the lockdown. So my question to you two is, what could other sports learn from the NFL in terms of their dealing with the COVID pandemic? I'm coming to you first, Nicko. What do you reckon?
Although there's been games postponed in the NFL, none have been outright cancelled, meaning, as you said, they've completed the full season. I think, as you saw in Hard Knocks at the start of the year, they're all wearing the contact tracing wristbands to show which players they've been in close contact with when they're at training, and staff members as well. And that's obviously worked out well, because then when they've had a case, they've been able to isolate those who've been classed as a close contact and also pull them out of training for a couple of days just to make sure that obviously there's no COVID actually being passed between players and staff. Well, that's what 31 franchises have done. The Browns, maybe not.
Oh, another dig.
Mate, he hates the Browns. Mention the time that the Ravens got it and they postponed the game so Lamar Jackson was fit again.
Yeah, well, that's a good thing for the Saints as well this time. The scheduling looks like they'll have Alvin Kamara back for their playoff game. But yeah, I think football could do very similar in training, I guess. And then it's obviously, I think football does it anyway, but punishing those who go out without a mask and stuff, they're fining them to try and prevent and stop it happening.
So your advice here, better contact tracing, harsher punishments for those breaking the rules. I think a lot of sports could learn from that. Just on Nicko's point there, a special friend of the podcast, a certain Mr. H, I won't name him, actually said last week the Saints could have Chris Kamara playing for them and they'd still beat the Bears this week. And what a nice little nugget to end on. So thank you very much for listening, listeners. Hope you've enjoyed our playoff preview special. We'll be back again next week to see how our wildcard picks got on. Follow us on social media if you haven't already, at Touchdown in the UK. Make sure you're liking, make sure you're subscribing to our YouTube page. Thank you all for listening. We look forward to speaking to you all next week.